Hi, welcome to this webinar on what to do after you graduate from your Nanodegree program. You all have accomplished so much, and my colleague Richard and I are very excited to talk to you about go over what you've done and tell you what you can do next. My name is Trin. I'm a program coordinator on the careers team, and I'll let my colleague Richard introduce himself.
Hey everybody, I'm Richard. I'm the curriculum lead for the front-end Nanodegree program here at Udacity. And I just want to echo what Trin is saying, just want to give you guys a big congratulations on everything that you've accomplished. It's truly a lot.
We want to take a moment to go over what you've done because some of you have been in the Nanodegree program for a few months or more, and you may have forgotten, but you should always remember that you have accomplished so much. We have hundreds of graduates who have gotten jobs from what they've learned in this Nanodegree. Yeah. I know some of you have a couple more projects to learn, but after you graduate, don't forget to continue learning.
Oh yeah, if you just look at the list that you guys have on your screen, there's just so much that you go through, and then when you're actually going into it, diving deep, you kind of lose track of what you've learned and how much you've actually accomplished. But like for the front-end students and full-stack students, just everything you've gone over, there's just so much material. But going from here, what you know now, you could want to look forward to like where you could go next with your learning. Like for front-end students, you would probably want to go something more React or maybe user experience testing, user interface, learn something more about that. That would be a good path to continue on in now.
Mm-hmm. And if you were a full-stack web developer graduate, you now have skills in like many pockets of web development, and I think it's time for you to just really focus on what you're interested in, explore different areas, learn more languages, and see what really stands out to you. As a developer, regardless of if you're front end, full stack, or back end, you're going to learn every single day of your as an engineer, as a developer.
The learning never stops.
Yes, never stops.
This is one of those fields where the learning continues forever.
To give you an idea of where you could be after graduation, we wanted to go over the stories of some graduates that have graduated from the program and then found a job. Both of them had to break into the tech field, and I'm sure many of you are facing that right now. So first, I want to talk about Maria. So Maria came from a background where she had 25 years of experience in marketing. Her education background was actually music, but she caught the development bug and she really wanted to become a full stack web developer. So her story, I think, will resonate with a lot of you because a lot of you have experience in other industries and want to do a career change. She loved programming, she loved building apps, and it was scary for her because she thought, I'm competing with people with more skills than me.
I bet, yeah. 25 years breaking into a new thing. That's
it's brave.
Scary.
It's brave, and she really let her passion overcome her imposter syndrome. The job that she has at FoxyCart, when she applied to it, it actually asked for her to have PHP experience, and it was something that she hadn't experienced before. But because she felt really confident with her Python and JavaScript skills, she actually dived deep into it and developed an app in a few days to showcase to the employer that she was serious and that she was an expert.
Yeah.
And our next story is about a graduate named Zahir, and I love his story because he didn't have much professional experience at all. So he wasn't just looking for his first job in tech, he was looking for his first job, period. And he knew that on his resume, he didn't have the titles and the jobs that other people would be looking for. So he went around about his job search a different way. He worked his butt off and went to so many networking events. He really wanted to dive deep into what other people were doing, hear about hot trends, just meet people and know what are you doing as a developer today. And he got his face out, and because he was face to face with someone, he could really communicate why he was passionate. He could make a case for himself, a case that sometimes you can't really make on paper. And it really paid off for him because the job that he got now as a front-end developer at Digital Insights in Georgia, he got via referral from someone he met at a networking event.
Oh yeah, relationships, they're huge in this field. So the more people you can meet, interact with, get to know them, see how you can help out with some of their projects maybe, the relationships you build are vital.
Yeah, and I think the takeaway that you want to take from Zahir is that find opportunity and take the opportunities that come to you.
Even if it's scary. It's worth it.
Yes.
It's worth it.
The payoff is definitely worth it. So you're wondering now, how do I become Maria? How do I become Zahir? So your next step is to actually just envision what you could do after graduation. It's your responsibility to learn about the different jobs that are out there and figure out, what you would like to do. And so, Richard, do you want to talk a bit about what front-end developers and full-stack developers do on a daily basis?
So for a front-end developer, they typically are dealing with the stuff that the client sees, or something that the user sees, the stuff on the front end of the website. All of your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. They'll work with user experience testers. They'll work with user interface designers to help create a useful thing for the web, so that users will be able to like navigate your website. Yeah, that's what front-end developers usually work with. Back-end is they deal with like building the APIs, interacting with the databases, doing that kind of work that then the front-end people end up using to get their data or to interact with the APIs. Full stack kind of has their fingers in everything. They deal with the front-end engineers, they deal with maybe the user experience people, they'll deal with the back-end. They just kind of like have like all parts they're interacting with, yeah.
And so how do these roles turn up in a job description? So we wanted to give you some job titles that are really common so you can have an idea of what to look for when you do a job search. So the caveat here is that job titles vary. The same title can mean different things at different companies. So it's your responsibility to read the full job description, do job searches based on your skills. I know like web developer and software engineers are different titles, but they sometimes different companies could mean the same role.
Yeah, and look at exactly what they are asking for your skills to be, and see, like, relate it to what you've done in the Nanodegree. Like, any of the projects you've built, could I relate any of those to what this job is asking me to do?
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. And I hope this shows you that you are actually qualified for jobs that you may thought you were not qualified for. So definitely expand your job search and focus on what's out there. So now, after going through this presentation with us, you probably have a lot of questions. So we're very, very happy to introduce industry expert, Art. Come on in, Art.
Hi.
Hey, I'll let Art introduce himself.
I'm Art Gillespie. I'm a senior software engineer at a company called Turbine Labs, a small startup in San Francisco. Before that, I was the director of engineering here at Udacity. And before that, I was an engineering manager at Google and Nest and a few other companies. So I've been engineering managing for about 20 years.
So we have asked students before, like, kind of what are they interested in and in learning from someone? How do they enter the industry?
Sure.
So kind of, can you give maybe a specifics of what, if you were hiring a front-end developer and a full-stack developer, what are kind of like the top 3 things you would look for?
So for me, it's always a question of what have they done? And when you're looking at somebody without experience, you're not necessarily looking for their job history, you're looking for the projects that they've worked on. And I can say that there's never been a better time to sort of make a name for yourself without having had a job in the industry you're looking at, especially with engineering. Like, you have this GitHub course?
Yeah.
I haven't seen this, but that's what's going on.
Released last month.
That's awesome, congratulations. But getting on GitHub is probably the best thing that you could do. From my perspective. If I see a candidate come in who's graduated from a Nanodegree and gotten involved with open source or built some products of their own, that's just huge. That kind of initiative is exactly what I'm looking for.
So you talked a bit about collaboration and stuff like that. Can you go in about how does an engineering team work? Like how do different people work together?
Yeah, so the way I like to structure engineering teams, and I've seen this at a lot of companies, is you basically build a small startup within your company. I mean, if you are a small startup, you're already there, but you get a cross-functional group of people, maybe a couple of front-end developers, maybe a couple of mobile developers, a back-end developer or 2, whatever you need for the project, and a product owner, which might be a product manager, or it might be an engineer that's, depending on the type of product, if it's more technical, it might be an engineering manager or a tech lead that's more experienced. And over 2-week, we call these sprints. Over these 2-week sprints, you focus on one part of the problem, one feature, one deliverable, and you ship that at the end of the 2 weeks, and you just keep doing those in 2-week cycles. And if the rule is kind of if you can't deliver something in 2 weeks, you break it down into smaller features. And I mean, the collaboration there is great because in an ideal situation, all these people are sitting together. You have a designer, back end, and all these kind of cross-pollinating things happen, and it just makes for better products. And that's generally how I like teams to work, and it's been really effective.
When I've experienced sprints kind of as a watcher, I've always been amazed about how you incorporate like really innovative stuff into it. So this is a question for both Art and Richard. What are some of the hot trends right now in web development?
Well, for front end, it's definitely would be React, would be the hottest trend right now. Something to learn.
For full stack, I know there are common, for the Nanodegree program, we teach Python. Would you say recommend students learn other languages
Yes.
right now to be relevant?
Yeah, so the two paths that I would recommend for back-end development are both Node, doing JavaScript on the back end. A lot of companies are sort of realizing that having a single language throughout the stack is a huge advantage, and it makes up for any, JavaScript on the server isn't the fastest thing, but sometimes all that developer productivity that you get is worth it. Companies like Netflix are migrating heavily away from Java towards JavaScript on the back end. So I think if you want to be full stack, I would actually recommend Node, JavaScript with Node.js, and also Go. It's a programming language out of Google that's really popular right now in sort of more infrastructure type back-end programming where you get sort of more systems level.
Okay, awesome. And so another question that our graduates ask us often is kind of what does my resume need to show? Like, for example, if a company was hiring for a full stack developer, they want to see Python and JavaScript. You mentioned recruiters nowadays will definitely look at your GitHub and they want to see activity, they want to see your personal projects. I'm looking for some insider tips, make sure that your resume really portrays this.
Well, first I want to say you just really want to tailor your resume to the specific project or the company that you're going for. So do some research on the company, look at what they're trying to build or what they're already currently doing and then tailor your resume to that and how you could fit in on the team and what projects you've done that would apply to that role at that company.
And I will also add that it's not just the job duties that matter, but the purpose of the company. If you apply to Udacity, for example, you want to talk about education, learning. So keep that in mind when you're tailoring your resume and job portfolio in general.
Right. And I think, there's sort of things that you probably want to do to get past the screeners, the sort of automated search process that recruiters use. But once it gets into my hands, any hiring manager is going to be looking at the cover letter, going to be looking as whether, did they put some effort into sort of tailoring this to me? I've definitely gotten not just form resumes, but form cover letters, which is kind of like, maybe this person didn't really put in the effort that we'd like to see. So that kind of customization and how well do they communicate in writing is really important. In terms of actual items on the resume that you brought up, I just love to see contributed to Project X, contributed to a big project that this company cares about.
So I think Richard and I went over it in the presentation a bit, but I think students still kind of want to know hey, it's my first day as a front-end web developer or a full-stack web developer. What am I doing?
The first day is a bit of the first week really is sort of drinking from the fire hose, right? Because no matter how experienced you are, this really has nothing to do with whether you're a new engineer or not. You're new in this company, and there's going to be a large code base that you have to learn. Even just getting the development environment set up. And depending on the company, maybe their onboarding documentation is up to date and maybe it's not, and you're sitting there, the new guy, the new person on the team wrestling with why won't this compile or why won't this install because things have gotten out of date or whatnot. So a lot of that is just onboarding, getting your development environment set up, getting to where you can build the product, whatever it is, whatever you're working on, and contribute something. I know that lots of companies, and I know that I always do this with my teams, I try to get you to have a commit on the first day, usually just something really small. But just so you sort of get into the rhythm of whatever the code reviews are, get your development environment set up. And then over the first couple weeks, usually some sort of strategically assigned bugs to familiarize engineers with the whole code base, or at least the part that they'll likely be working on.
And it also brings up another topic, people generally don't talk about kind of the non-technical aspects of being a developer. I know that documentation and communications are vital. Can you both speak on that?
Documentation is huge. We have a course here on writing READMEs, and that's one of the courses that's in every single Nanodegree, because writing documentation is incredibly important for projects to succeed and to be maintained well. If you can write documentation clearly, that's just a really vital skill to have.
A cameo in that video.
Oh, yeah, you do.
You make a cameo in the GitHub course too.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So I wanted students to kind of hear about what they would do in the day-to-day, because when you're interviewing, you want to draw on this. You want to, speaking of Maria, for example, this full-stack student graduate I talked about, she kind of something that she differentiated herself with was that she loved documentation. So she went into the interview, she was like, this is something that I can do that many people kind of are adverse to. I will write, I will document everything. You will always know what I did 6 months ago, why I did it. And it really really attracted her to the employer, because the employer is like, yes, Maria will be a good contribution to this. Group.
I would be incredibly impressed if somebody said that in an interview. And that's another way back to the GitHub thing. If you feel like you're not ready to commit code, or you're maybe feeling intimidated or whatever, which is perfectly natural. I still feel intimidated when I approach a new open source project. But if you go in and write documentation, first of all, there is not an open source project in the world that won't be insanely grateful. And second of all, that's just really impressive to see that sort of initiative and people that take the time to document, as you point out.
Are there other non-technical skills that you would that you would like to see in a developer?
During the big one is communication. And this is another thing. When I look at GitHub, I'm not just looking for code. I'm actually looking for how you participate in the project. And if you've written issues where they articulate, inevitably, conflict comes up, and how did you deal with that? Was everybody polite and well-spoken? And those sorts of things. So communication is actually probably, in some ways, more important than your coding skill. I feel like, between me and some senior engineers, we could teach, mentor people on the engineering aspects. It's actually, I found it very difficult to get over kind of communication difficulty in the past. So communication, I would say, is right up there, just as important as engineering skill. And then just kind of organization skills, time management, project management, that's always a huge bonus.
I'd also say willingness to learn something new, because you'll come into a new project and you don't want to act like you know everything, and you want to be willing to learn. Like Art said, more senior people are definitely willing to educate you and to train you on things. So you don't have to know everything, but I think one of the big things you might want to mention is that you love learning and you really want to continue learning.
And a way to showcase this too, that that you're good at communication, or actually just develop your communication skills in general, and to show how much you love learning, is to continually go to hackathons and meetups. I think people really like seeing that. You don't even have to place in a hackathon, but you're willing to put yourself out there and really immerse yourself in this world. It's really good to see.
And beyond that, writing tutorials. You'd be surprised. It's actually really effective for people to write tutorials when they're learning something. I think there's a feeling among folks that are new to the industry that you write tutorials when you're an expert or when you're a instructor at Udacity. But it's actually great to go through, figure something out, and then write about it on Medium. And again, that's another great way to showcase your communication skills and also just your enthusiasm and your initiative.
A lot of our graduates have done that too, like how I learned to be a developer in 3 months. And it's a way for them to challenge themselves too.
And you'll really knock holes into your knowledge when you start teaching something. Because when you start teaching something, then you realize, oh my gosh, I actually didn't know this as well as I thought. Oh, and there's this part that I didn't find out about until I started teaching it. And then I realized, wait, this is important. So you'll really learn a lot when you actually start teaching.
Let's go back to kind of the job search process and about interviews. I think right now companies are doing they're trying innovative things, but kind of regularly in general, what should a developer expect in an interview?
I think you should still expect the standard, I don't necessarily agree with this, but I think you should still expect the standard sort of, whiteboard, basic algorithm coding questions. And I think you'll want to expect a behavioral question interview. So, typically, it's different in every company, but a lot of companies still basically do 3 or 4 whiteboard algorithm questions, a system design question, and a behavioral question, I meant interview. 45 minutes, 3 45-minute interviews with different folks doing algorithm questions, and another 45-minute interview doing behavioral questions. So it'll be tell me about a time that you were frustrated and what did you do about it. Tell me about a time that you disagreed with a coworker or a fellow student or somebody on a project and how you dealt with it. And then a 45-minute system design question, which might be a higher level sort of, a good example of this from real life is design Reddit. And then you get to, and all these questions, I think it's important to remember that they're not designed to see whether you know the answer to the question. They're designed to see whether or how you go about solving problems, and in all the cases. So you don't want to freeze up, even if you shouldn't have seen the problem before, ideally. Actually, if you've seen the problem before, I'm always impressed by somebody that goes, I know this one, I can do it if you want me to, but I was studying cracking the coding interview, and I just did this last night. I'm super impressed with people that are honest about that.
Yeah.
Give me a hard one. So a lot of times people don't get through them, but they still do really well because you're looking for their ability and how they approach problems, how enthusiastic they are. Do they get intimidated? Do they freak out? Are they collaborative? Do they talk about their, they talk out loud about their problem-solving approach? Now, there are other things you might see out there that I'm excited about, where you'll get a project instead, and you'll have fewer sort of programming on the whiteboard. You'll get a project to do at home. Don't be surprised to run into that. A lot of companies are doing that. I wouldn't say a majority, but that's really exciting because I think that's a better indicator of people's success on the job.
I know a concern a lot of our job seekers have is that they're just gonna they're gonna see something that they actually know how to do, but they're just gonna be so nervous that they can't do it. And they're like, is it a deal breaker? Can I recover from this? So I think maybe some good advice would be, if you do make a mistake, if you realize you're going down the wrong path, what do you do during the interview?
Oh, you say, oh, no, wait. So my trick is, so I just get really enthusiastic when I've interviewed in the past. I get super enthusiastic. Oh, no, you know what we can do instead? But that kind of enthusiasm and not, being fearful. And it's good to practice that. Do mock interviews with your friends. I know Udacity sometimes offers mock interviews.
After this webinar, we can send out this link. We partner with this great company called Preamp, and via Udacity, you can have unlimited mock interviews. So take advantage.
Yeah, definitely. I recommend taking advantage of that because it is an alien experience if you haven't done it before, and even if you have, honestly. So practicing, if I were to go for a technical interview tomorrow, I would spend all night tonight practicing with my wife at a whiteboard at home because it's just a very alien experience.
Okay, we've gone through all of that. So let's take some questions from the audience. So if you have questions now, please ask them, and so we can make sure we can get to them before the webinar ends. This is something we haven't touched on before. A lot of our students are in areas where there isn't a tech hub, or just their life balance. They can't go into work every day. So what do you think about remote work? Like, how possible is it in this world to have a remote job? And I would note that Maria is also a full stack web developer.
Well, I can just say I worked remotely I worked in my company's office for the first 2 years, but then they moved their main office 5 states away. And I was like, I'm not really going to move. But then they told me I could work remotely. So I worked remotely for over 5.5 years. So you can totally do it. You find the companies that really want it. I've seen lots of job descriptions where it says remote friendly. So they're definitely willing to work with remote people.
And I'm seeing that a lot more as well. I mean, half of the company I'm at now, five of the folks are remote. One's in Berlin. I mean, yeah. So I'm definitely seeing that a lot more. And talking with other engineering managers, companies are getting more flexible about it. Not the big ones so much, not Google or Facebook, but definitely lots of startups and smaller companies are more progressive in that regard.
And if I would also tell students that if you're interested in working remotely, just ask the employer. You may be able to compromise, like you start off your training in public, but maybe in the office, but then you can do a half and half. I definitely see that tech is a realm where people really want to try to make you happy and just make you comfortable, because if you're happy and you're passionate, you're able to do your job well, then obviously you will do your job well, and that's good for the company.
Yeah, so, I might also say that working remotely isn't for everybody. A coworker of mine also started working remotely, and he just couldn't do it, and so then he decided to move to the main office because it's just a different kind of, working style, working remotely from working in the office.
Yeah, what works for you definitely works for you. And it's good to be honest to yourself about that. Like, don't apply to a job in a state you don't want to live in, all these things. So another question we have is for both of you about how you keep your skills relevant. And I feel like you're working day to day, so that's probably how, but are there any conferences or suggestions you have?
Sure. So I think I kind of think it's a little unfair because I have the greatest job where I have to learn about the new technology so that then we can teach it here at Udacity. So it's great. So I spend tons of time just reading the new specifications and what is coming out and where is the community moving as a whole. I'm on Twitter all the time. I follow famous developers and just be like, oh, what are they doing? Where do they think the industry is going? And I read lots of blog posts, and then so it's just always constantly learning. So.
Yeah, and I would just echo that, honestly. I have my Twitter list for front end, my Twitter list for infrastructure, and from there it sort of fans out to blog posts and new papers, research papers. And I don't really do, I occasionally speak at a conference, but I usually don't go to them. I will sort of cherry pick the videos afterwards, just to sort of save time.
Are there any specific resources, like a blog, that you think students should check out? And we can also just ask you later, and I can send it out to students.
I can share my list. But I think one that I've been finding that I've been reading a lot of the content coming out of is it's a Medium site called Hacker Noon. And just they have several different topics, but one of them is JavaScript, and a lot of really thoughtful and sort of forward-looking stuff coming out of there.
I know for front-end people, which is what I mostly am, there's CSS Tricks is a phenomenal website with lots of great content coming out.
Our students right now, there are still students there. Most of them are 1 or 2 projects away from graduation, and that's probably when they'll really ramp up their job search. As you know, like in our Nanodegree program, most projects have the same specifications. So students are trying to meet those specifications. I think this is more of a question for Richard, but do you have advice on how to differentiate yourself and make sure like the latest project that you've done is different from another Nanodegree student, for example?
When you're creating a project, or when you're doing one of our Udacity projects, thousands of other students are probably doing that exact same project, and you all have the exact same rubric that you're following. So the way you would stand out would be just meet those specifications, but then just go above and beyond. Like create, like if it asks you like to do feature A, B, and C, try to come up with a feature D. And instead of using maybe like they don't provide you any styling or something, try to make it beautiful little website. Just like go above and beyond and try to see like what new technology could you maybe incorporate into it, and then write about that new technology to show to show like the world that I did this project, I went above and beyond by adding this part to it, and here's what I learned about adding this new feature to that project.
I definitely, I know recruiters really love seeing that passion project. Like they would rather see like one project that you worked on for a very long time, you kept coming back, adding new stuff, like really digging in and developing, because that's what you'll do in real life, like, right? You're not going to just put out this product and then never come back to it. You're going to continue editing it. Could I ask you both kind of about how you update projects? Like you talked about, it needs a design sprint, but like if you release like one version, let's say of the Udacity classroom, kind of what goes into releasing the second version?
A lot of work in that particular case. Go ahead, Richard.
Oh gosh.
Think about it.
So creating a new updating projects or whatever? Well, when you're building a project, you will probably just like new ideas will come to you as like, oh, I should add this to it. Oh, and I should add this to it. So while you're building just like your base, like here's what the project is going to be. I'm just like the minimum viable project. Just get that out there. And don't try to do everything at once. That's like you'll get burned out. You'll get like feature overkill, and then you don't know where to start and what to do. Just like focus on your project, and then just like when you have a new idea for it, just write that down and just add those later.
So it looks like we don't have any more questions coming in, which is fine. You've learned a lot in this webinar. If you have more questions, don't be afraid to ask us. You can write into career-support@udacity.com, and then we'll make sure that you get your answers. How about let's just end this with kind of like your last tip. My tip for you, as someone who my main goal is to help you get a portfolio to get a job, I would say just do not stop coding, period. Active GitHub. You want to be able to go into an interview and say, hey, yesterday I was working on this, or last week I was working on this. You don't want your last project to be a couple months ago.
Yeah, and I can't top that. That's really good advice. As you come out of your Nanodegree, and congratulations, by the way, it's really exciting whenever folks get close to graduating. So the working on projects, either I would actually bias a little bit more towards participating in existing large projects because you're going to learn a lot about how a project works. But even if you're just off doing your passion project and you're really excited about it, working on it every day, and to something that Richard was talking about, GitHub actually has the tools to manage the feature list, and just digging into that and figuring out how that works is a great skill that you can kind of learn as you're doing your thing. But yeah, just keep at it, enjoy it, work on stuff you're passionate about, stick with it, and I'm sure you'll get a job soon.
So my tip is, maybe you have seen it, maybe you haven't. There are projects called TIL, Today I Learned, and so like if you look on like GitHub, there are lots of people that have TIL projects. They just update it, maybe once a week, maybe 2-3 times a week, maybe twice a month, something like that, where they write down just on a little like markdown file what they learned about, and like maybe a little like example or a little just description of what they learned. And so that will help build up your GitHub profile, and it shows that you are continuing to learn and that you're interested in the field.
So thank you for staying through this. We were really happy to be able to congratulate you on what you've achieved so far, and we can't wait to congratulate you on your graduation.